Hello and welcome to ARIRANG News Break. I'm Han-daeun in Seoul. We begin with Korea's financial strategy for the future. At an annual meeting held at the top office of Cheongwade, the government has vowed stronger budget reforms that will strengthen control over the allocation and execution of taxpayers' money. Our presidential office correspondent Song Ji-sun has the details.
Improving the nation's financial health to prep for a future with slowing growth. The focus of this year's financial strategy meeting was on long-term analysis to counter future risks ahead of time. Chairing the annual meeting held to discuss next year's budget, President Park Geun-hye stressed that the government's finances must be a strong backbone of the economic recovery, with uncertainties in and out of the country expected to increase in the years to come. Korea's rapidly aging society, coupled with a rise in welfare demand and a fall in potential growth, poses a serious threat to the nation's fiscal health in the future. The government has vowed all-out reform efforts to effectively manage Korea's finances through SMART, which stands for Strategy, Merge, Autonomy, Restructuring, and Technology, for a more strategic distribution of resources. Korea will reinforce its fiscal regulations for stricter budget controls, and a related bill will be passed to the National Assembly in the latter half of this year. The central government will also press local governments to be more responsible for their budget operations. It will also give the nation's 17 innovation centers a greater role so they can create more jobs through employment zones launched in each branch. Song Ji-sun, ARIRANG News.
North Korea's foreign minister has vowed that Pyongyang will counter U.S. nuclear threats with its own nuclear weapons. He also slammed the United States, saying it was plotting to launch a nuclear attack on his country. Park Jong-hong reports.
North Korea has unleashed more hostile rhetoric against the United States. Speaking in New York on Thursday, the regime's top diplomat Lee Soo-yong slammed the U.S. for conducting what he calls nuclear war exercises to attack the North, apparently referring to the annual military drills between the U.S. and South Korea. As a consequence, Lee said his country developing nuclear weapons was inevitable in order to counter the nuclear threat posed by the U.S. The minister made the remarks during a keynote speech at a high-level meeting of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals at the UN headquarters. Lee claimed Pyongyang tried to have dialogue and made efforts through international law to remove the nuclear threat, but he said it was to no avail. He added North Korea will make sure the U.S. pays the price for hampering the North's sustainable development and urged Washington to immediately end its, quote, hostile policy toward Pyongyang. He also had some harsh words for the United Nations. He strongly protested the UN Security Council sanctions against the North, saying they are a challenge to the country's sustainable development. He vowed that North Korea will never give in to the sanctions. North Korea's foreign minister is in New York for the signing of a historic UN climate agreement set for Friday, local time. Park Jong-hong, ARIRANG News.
With North Korea's continued aggressive rhetoric, talks on how to deal with the regime's threats will take place in Beijing today between the top nuclear envoys of South Korea and China. Here's our Kwon So-ah.
South Korea's top nuclear chief Kim Hong-yoon and his Chinese counterpart Wu Da-wei are meeting for bilateral talks in Beijing this Friday. Before departing, Kim gave an interview with a local news outlet and stressed the importance of close communication with Beijing at this time, citing North Korea's violation of UN Security Council resolutions through its attempted test firing of a mid-range ballistic missile last week. Implementation of sanctions is expected to be on the top of the agenda at the talks. The meeting comes just a day after Wu's one-on-one with Washington's representative to the six-party talks, Sung Kim, in which they expressed strong opposition to Pyongyang's irresponsible acts and concern regarding a possible fifth nuclear test.
We, and in fact, I think other members of the six-party process have made very clear that we remain open to credible and meaningful diplomacy. We all want that. Unfortunately, North Korea has shown no interest in working with us towards some credible and meaningful effort towards denuclearization.
Seoul's foreign ministry sees significance in the back-to-back bilateral talks between the U.S. and China and South Korea and China.
We hope that the talks will contribute to increased trilateral cooperation among Seoul, Washington and Beijing on addressing the North Korean nuclear issue.
Some experts say a three-way meeting may not bear much fruit.
I do believe three-way talks are needed, but there are differences between South Korea and the U.S. on how to respond to Pyongyang, as well as China's perspective. While Seoul remains focused on changing North Korea through sanctions, China wants North Korea included in six-party talks.
That's why many are concerned that trilateral talks at this point would yield little progress, taking into account the differing stances of the three nations. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
A passenger train derailed and partially flipped over in Korea's southern Jeollanam-do province early this morning, killing one engineer and injuring 8 passengers. The Mugunghwa 1517 train, carrying a total of 27 people, was headed to the southern port city of Yeosu from Seoul. The exact cause of the accident has yet to be confirmed, but local police say it appears the train driver ignored guidelines from the train controller. The driver was also going around 130 kilometers an hour when the guided speed was under 50 kilometers an hour. All train operations between Suncheon Station and Yeosu Expo Station are now suspended. Japan's self-defense forces and police have resumed rescue operations in Kumamoto today, focusing mostly on finding the missing people in Minami-Aso, a village devastated by a large landslide. Rescue operations had been suspended since Wednesday due to heavy rain. Most convenience stores and gas stations have resumed operations with power fully restored Wednesday night, except in a few heavily affected areas. 2 strong earthquakes last week and its aftershocks left some 90,000 people displaced and destroyed around 10,000 homes. The Korean government plans to provide $100,000 worth of relief supplies on Friday afternoon, including blankets, tents, bottled water, and rice. And that does it for now. Stick around for more news updates coming up at 6 p.m. Korea time.